Prime Minister Modi has been honoured with the highest civilian order of Bhutan, the Order of the Druk Gyalpo, which makes him the first foreign head of government to receive this public recognition. The order has been presented to him by the Bhutanese king during his currently ongoing two-day visit, which is also his third visit to the Himalayan nation since assuming office in 2014. While expressing gratitude for the award, the Prime Minister has dedicated the same to 140 crore Indians. The PM has also expressed gratitude for the warm welcome that he received in Bhutan and emphasized on the need to strengthen the enduring friendship between India and Bhutan. This visit of the Prime Minister is aimed at reinforcing India's long-standing relationship with the neighbourhood first policy. What does this really mean, and why is it that the Prime Minister has chosen this time to head all the way to Bhutan while there is an election season underway in India? We take this conversation forward. I have with me Ambassador Mahesh Sachdeva, former diplomat, Pathikrit Pain, international affairs expert, Major General Sudhakarji, geopolitical and strategic and defense expert, Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, also with us on the broadcast. I will, of course, try to rope in all of our guests. I believe I'm missing some names there, but let me begin with Ambassador Mahesh Sachdeva. Ambassador Sachdeva, if you could perhaps shed some light on your understanding, sir, of this two-day visit that the Prime Minister has taken. At any other given time, it would probably not beg this particular question, but we are, like I said, in a very hectic election cycle. Amidst all of that, the Prime Minister chooses to go to Bhutan. Why do you think so, sir?
I think the visit is extremely important because Bhutan is a very important geopolitical partner, geostrategic partner of India. Internally, between the two countries, there's been an enmity. The king visited India last November. The Prime Minister of Bhutan was here earlier this month to prepare for Prime Minister's visit. In fact, this would be Prime Minister's last visit in the current term, last foreign visit in the current term. So that underlines what you just said. It's extremely important for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I think it's become a Prime Minister Modi's tradition to visit an important neighboring country before elections. You remember that before the last election, he went to Bangladesh, and this time it's Bhutan. In fact, after the first election and the second election, he visited Bhutan and Nepal also. So neighborhood has been an important priority. Secondly, one would like to also point out that Chinese have been trying to make inroads into Thimphu. A Chinese delegation has been negotiating opening of their embassy in Thimphu. And there are issues about demarcation of border between China and Bhutan that impinges upon India's own national security. If you recall, foreign affairs and defense of Bhutan is guided by India. Bhutan remains sovereign under the latest treaty of 2008, but India it gets guided by what India has to say on these issues. So the visit is important. I think in a real domestic realpolitik way, perhaps going to a Buddhist country before the elections could do no harm to BJP's prospects as well.
Right, absolutely. Let me bring in Major General Sudhakarji into the conversation as well. Major General Sudhakarji, your perspective on the same, sir. And of course, also keeping in mind the sort of welcome the Prime Minister has received in Bhutan. There has been, of course, a red carpet rollout, but so much of the cultural link has also been highlighted in this particular visit of the Prime Minister.
Devika, good evening. Thank you for getting me to your show. Being a military man and dabbling in geopolitical analysis, I would actually extend the perspective to what is happening around the world very briefly, and the situation environment being polarized and the ongoing conflict in the Russo-Ukraine Central European area, and the Hamas and the Israel's conflict and its expanding spheres, and the rivalry in the Indo-Pacific, which is expanding by the day. So all these things put together actually, draws our attention to the immediate neighborhood of India. In the immediate neighborhood, we all are aware as to what is happening, how the geopolitical situation is actually evolving by the day. It's dynamic in nature. Given the geostrategic importance of Bhutan, where exactly it's located, and being dominating our Siliguri corridor, I would say that this visit of our Honorable Prime Minister to Bhutan at such a critical juncture where the political dynamics are actually building up momentum in our country, I would say, in my opinion, it is sensitive in nature, it is security oriented, and it is significant. Having said that, I also would like to compliment our previous co-panelist, the Honorable ex-ambassador. I would say that the dynamics in Bhutan itself are also quite challenging. Apart from the embassies which are located inside Bhutan, there are no P5 countries who have been given any kind of a toehold inside Bhutan as of today. And China, being a member of the P5, it has been making all-out effort since past several years to have a deeper penetration into Bhutan and essentially establish an embassy in Bhutan itself. That is one. Second, also there are a number of tourists who are increasing by the day. Number three, the kind of contracts which are coming into Bhutan, although not directly identifiable with the Chinese company, but through Singapore and the Southeast Asian countries, the companies which are actually involved in construction activities as also supply chain replenishment into Bhutan are raising queries in the mind about the enhanced footprint of China. Third, I would say that the most important issue as far as India is concerned is the Chumbi Valley. We all are aware about the 495 square kilometers in the northern central Bhutan, which China has been making an all-out effort to exchange the same with 89 square kilometers of little patch in the Doklam, which will enable it to have direct access and approach to the Jhamperi Ridge. Jhamperi Ridge is a dominating feature which overlooks Siliguri corridor. That actually enhances sensitivity of the security imperative of India. So therefore, I would say that no matter what the niceties, diplomatic niceties are being couched and being propagated and shared in the environment, India should be mindful, and the bottom line should be that yes, Bhutan is one of the important neighborhood. We definitely extend the principles and policies and all the niceties of the first neighborhood policy. But the bottom line should be, at no cost should we allow the China's inroads, maybe 9 kilometers away from Doklam, where we had given a standoff in 2017, is Pagda village. Through Pagda village, there is a road meandering through the mountainscape and coming up to Jhamperi Ridge. That cannot be allowed at any chance, at any circumstances. So therefore, India should be, I am very, very sure that our Mandarins experts who are into the subject would be going all out and making an all-out negotiation with Bhutan to be an active member to prevent this particular apprehension coming true. So last but not the least, Devika, is that no matter what happens, we need to continue to engage Bhutan as an immediate, I would say, a contiguous, geographically contiguous neighboring state or the nation, and need to make all-out effort to ensure that not only the penetration of China is prevented in a significant manner, but also to contain as far as possible. Back to you, Devika.
Absolutely. Pathikrit, bringing you into the conversation here as well. I just want to understand from you, Pathikrit, yes, India has focused a lot on the neighborhood first policy, but we've most often seen ourselves looking at some neighbors that have posed challenges, some trouble, be it Sri Lanka, for a brief period of time, some trouble in Bangladesh, then of course there's Maldives right now. Amidst that, India choosing now to also ensure that Bhutan knows that we do consider them extremely important partners of our nation in this region. What sort of a message is India then sending out to all of its neighbors?
Devika, good evening. See, interestingly, today the Prime Minister was speaking in Hindi in Bhutan, and everybody had absolutely no problem in understanding, and they were cheering in every statement that the Prime Minister of India was making. That shows the level of connect that people of Bhutan have with people of India. Frankly speaking, if you look at the landscape of India's development over the last 10 years, in terms of emerging from a very difficult situation to become the 5th largest economy of the world, from emerging from being among one of the fragile 5 economies of 2013 to among the major 5 economies of 2023, the world. The transformation of India actually impacts Bhutan enormously. Look, Bhutan may be geographically a small country, but its population has equal aspirations. So many of them do come to India. There are major areas of convergence in culture, in food, in other areas as well, including, of course, religion and ethos, philosophy, traditions. So any kind of development that happens in India is a positive for Bhutan, and it is equally important for the incumbent government of India to explain that thing to people of Bhutan. Some of those templates will be replicated in Bhutan as well. So from that perspective, this visit and the manner in which the Prime Minister of India was explaining how India has been transforming, how India's transformation would help Bhutan as well. I think that's a very, very important, thread in the entire development of South Asia. Yes, it is true that some of the countries in South Asia, especially the likes of Maldives, have shown, especially the present regime, and their behavior has not been very friendly. It is an unfortunate development, but South Asia and especially the Indian Ocean region would be an area of competition over the next 1 or 2 decades. And especially because China is trying to expand its footprint. We have seen this trend in many of these countries, especially in countries like Maldives, and maybe a little bit of that we have seen in Sri Lanka as well, that some particular political parties or regimes, when they come to power, they tend to show affinity towards China more, and when the other one comes, they are far more friendly towards India than the other dispensation. So in the middle of all these, it is a reality that whether it is Maldives or whether it is Sri Lanka, whether it is Nepal to a certain extent, and whether it is Pakistan, they are all in debt traps, maybe in different proportions, but they are in huge debt traps being created by China. So I think it's a lesson for countries like Bhutan as well, that most of the time when India gives money, and that has been conveyed very clearly by the External Affairs Minister of India as well, that when India gives money, even to Maldives, it is mostly in the form of a grant and not in the form of a loan with very high interest rates, which actually would have otherwise created a problem for a small country like Maldives to repay the problem that they're facing with China right now. So I think there are 2 different important aspects. Just 1 minute more. India has been telling it to the countries like Bhutan and others that they want to develop India along with development of the immediate neighborhood without putting any kind of pressure, blackmail, without putting them into any kind of debt trap, vis-a-vis the model that we witness from some other countries where they want to stranglehold, create vassal states, impose stringent conditions, create exclusivity, and then create a financial mess. So I think these 2 models are there for the South Asian countries to witness. From that perspective, this visit is also important. And it is a message that even when the Prime Minister of the country will be in the middle of one of the most challenging or complex elections of this millennium or this century, maybe if not this century of the next, in this one decade of the world, he still finds time for Bhutan. That shows the level of importance that India gives to its neighborhood, and that is an indication that India somewhat will not abandon its neighbors when difficult times comes.
Okay.
It was a great occasion.
Right, absolutely. Before I bring in Gautam Mukherjee, we also have a soundbite of the Prime Minister on the highest civilian honour that has been bestowed upon him. Let's quickly listen into what Prime Minister Modi said today.
मेरे प्यारे दोस्तों, नमस्कार। कुजू जांगपोला। योर मैजेस्टी, आज एक भारतीय के नाते मेरे जीवन का बहुत बड़ा दिन है। आपने मुझे भूटान के सर्वोच्च राष्ट्रीय अवार्ड से सम्मानित किया है। हर अवार्ड अपने आप में विशेष होता ही है, लेकिन जब किसी अन्य देश से अवार्ड मिलता है तो ये भरोसा मजबूत होता है कि हम दोनों देश सही दिशा में आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। हमारा ये विश्वास भी बढ़ता है कि हमारे प्रयासों से दोनों देशों के लोगों का कल्याण हुआ है। हमें और अधिक परिश्रम करने का उत्साह मिलता है, ऊर्जा मिलती है, लेकिन यह सम्मान मेरी व्यक्तिगत उपलब्धि नहीं है। ये भारत और 140 करोड़ भारतीयों का सम्मान है। भूटान की इस महान भूमि पर मैं सभी भारतवासियों की ओर से यह सम्मान नम्रता से स्वीकार करता हूं और इस सम्मान के लिए आपका और भूटान की जनता का हृदय से कोटि कोटि धन्यवाद करता हूं। सुखद संयोग से अभी 3 दिन पहले ही हिज रॉयल हाइनेस का जन्मदिन भी था। 2 दिन पहले ही हमने इंटरनेशनल हैप्पीनेस डे भी सेलिब्रेट किया। मौसम ने थोड़ी सी चुनौती अवश्य दी, लेकिन वो भारत और भूटान की दोस्ती और मेरे यहां आने में बात।
Gautam Mukherjee also with us on the broadcast. Gautam Mukherjee, your take on the Prime Minister, as Pathikrit also pointed out, he's in Bhutan during a very important election cycle in India. He's speaking in Hindi, and he's also the first head of state to be bestowed the highest civilian honor by the nation. What does this indicate of also Bhutan's expectations then of India going ahead as one really solid nation and really solid partner in this specific region, where there is, of course, a lot of pressure and posturing by China that's going on?
Yes, Devika, it's a lot more than just pressuring and posturing. It's downright threatening on the part of China, which has not only taken over a large part of Doklam, but also including making every effort to dominate the tri-junction between the 3 countries. They've also taken over another lot of Bhutanese territory in another direction. What Bhutan is desperately trying to do is balance the Chinese pressures with a bilateral arrangement with India. They're opening a free trade zone, which was announced some time back, right on the Indian border. And this will no doubt proceed quite fast with Indian grants and soft loans. And so that is the most that they can expect to do. They cannot take on China in any strong militarist sense. And as far as India is concerned, I think we are very clear that whether it's the LAC or whether it's here in the Sikkim area or in the Bhutan area, we are prepared to resist militarily any aggression that China may be contemplating. And as long as we keep on strengthening this arm, I don't think China will risk it because of the consequences. We also have diplomatic support, as in Arunachal Pradesh, from the United States, which is very heartening because they've come through very quickly and on their own to say Arunachal is very much a part of India, no matter what China and its fantasists think. So my last point is that, we cannot really work out or dominate what an individual sovereign nation like Bhutan, like Sri Lanka, Nepal, anybody that is around us, including Bangladesh, with whom we have good relations, because all of them are, to a lesser or greater extent, also in a partnership with China. The only thing we can do is tell them that, look, if you go completely into Chinese pockets, it's not a very wise thing to do, not just the debt trap, but in terms of your sovereignty threatened, your land threatened. They've taken over chunks of Nepal, for example. You are better off balancing one against the other. And
Yes.
we are a reliable partner, we have always been, and we do not work in a predatory manner in terms of our foreign policy, so we're a pretty good bet. And as the time goes on, the equation between China and India is tilting towards India. We are today, of course, an inferior economic power compared to China. We're also probably an inferior military power in terms of overall strength, but we can certainly offer a very substantial bloody nose. We have troops that know how to fight, which is something that the Chinese do not. Chinese have lots of equipment, but they have conscripts and they have dubious equipment as well, as some of their generals have pointed out. So all in all, can they dare to take us on? I don't think so. Not as long as we pursue our present policies. Devika.
All right, I have to wrap up this conversation, but I just have a minute or so left, and I'll divide that up between Ambassador Mahesh Sachdeva and Major Sudhakarji. But I would just, Ambassador Sachdeva, same question. I just want to understand from you and from your perspective, India, of course, making this outreach to Bhutan, but also receiving a very warm welcome. Is this then an indication of India's focus and the need of the hour to maintain great relations from countries that have not yet succumbed to Chinese pressure? Because a lot of times we talk about how there's a lot of chatter about things that are done post facto. Once relations with China have been established, then there's no point in making in putting across your point at that point in time. But the fact that India, before any of those Chinese pressures come onto Bhutan, is making sure that a very loud message is being sent.
I think you're absolutely right. It's a bit of a preventive diplomacy. I should add here that 98% of Bhutan's imports are to India, and more than two-thirds of investments made in that country are from India. India has been generous in terms of making power stations, hydroelectric power stations, and buying the power from from Bhutan. So it's all working in a positive, virtuous cycle. And I think Prime Minister's visit would add to the speed of spinning of this virtuous cycle.
All right, Major Sudhakarji, last word to you, sir. Is this then preventive diplomacy, ensuring that our neighbor knows we don't take you for granted?
Absolutely, Devika, I tend to agree with all the co-panelists, previous co-panelists. I would say India, it's about time that we adopt a very proactive, multi-pronged approach to deal with the neighborhood, immediate neighborhood, and especially Bhutan. Let's not look at Bhutan as Bhutan alone. We have 7 sisters in the northeast, and the only narrow corridor which is connecting them. And therefore, I would recommend that we apply all the multiple relevant components of dealing with our neighborhood, to include economics, to diplomacy, the military might. And I also would say that in democracy per se, you see, let's not look at Bhutan as a kind of isolated country. There is a democracy emerging with very high-end kind of aspirations. People have started going abroad. They're going for academic curriculums to Singapore and elsewhere in the country. The number of students to India, we need to encourage them, attract them. Also, I would say that there has to be a constant engagement with Bhutan as intensely as possible.
Yes.
Not only with the Prime Minister, but by different stakeholders and the leadership in the hierarchy, so
Right.
that we constantly get to know the pulse as to what is happening. And I would, last but not the least, Devika, the agreement which had been signed between Bhutan and China way back in August 2021, 3 steps to resolve the boundary issue. India should be privy to all the inner caveats of all the issue,
Yes.
and the way it is going to impact us. And last but not the least, India should not accept any other tri-junction than Batangla, which is a time-tested, well-accepted tri-junction between India, Bhutan and China. Back to you,
Right,
Devika.
absolutely. I thank all of our guests, experts, panelists for joining us.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.